we are talking about taxes. Taxes is something that affects small and growing businesses, SMEs, and even corporate institutions. So it is a good thing that we are able to go through it for the past few weeks. This is with the support of Kenya Revenue Authority. It is good to hear everything from the horse's mouth. So with that, I would like to bring forward the KRA team to introduce themselves and let us know who is in the house. And with that also, I'd like to welcome everybody here who has come to join us. You can also invite your friends who have not joined to come and join us so that they're able to have an open session, as we call it. It's called the town hall, where you can be able to have a meet and greet with KRA and be able to have any other queries that were not answered during the sessions. Asanteni sana. Mendy, back to you.
Asante sana. Thank you so much to the team. It's been indeed a wonderful last few months engaging with you all and your members especially in order to sensitize you on some key matters taxation and just to work well together and partner. I'll just give my colleagues an opportunity to introduce themselves, and I request Madam Susan Jeru, if she's in a position to present last, maybe just with a brief overview of the stakeholder engagement unit and her role there. But I'll begin. My name is Mendy Mwangi. I work in the Kenya Revenue Authority within the Domestic Taxes Department, one of the key revenue departments within KRA. Specifically, I serve in the Taxpayer Services Unit within the Stakeholder Engagement Division, tasked with partnering with key external and internal stakeholders on their challenges when it comes to matters taxation, receive their feedback in order to escalate the same, and again, improve the relationship between the taxman and the taxpayers, our key stakeholders. Allow me to hand over to the eTIMS team just to introduce themselves. Then eTIMS, I request you to hand over to Customs. We are grateful to have them present with us today to support during the Q&A session. And then finally, Madam Rita, maybe you can hand over to Susan to just briefly introduce herself and our units. Good morning, Carol and Ian.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mindy, for this forum as well. My name is Ayeko Ian from the eTIMS team. I believe I'm joined with my colleagues. I believe they'll introduce themselves, but it's a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Caroline Bagara, eTIMS Operations Unit. We hope to engage in more depth on matters eTIMS. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana to our eTIMS team. Madam Rita Susan, karibu sana. You are the sole representative of our key department within KRA. Maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself and your office.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mendy. My name is Rita Susan. I'm from Customs and Border Control Department. Our division is Trade Facilitation, and I work at the Taxpayer Services Desk. Ours is normally to make sure that we engage with our stakeholders, either virtually or physically, and be able to share anything that is new and, of course, the concerns of our stakeholders. Thank you very much for having me.
Asante sana, Madam Rita Susan. Madam Rita Susan's team is the equivalent of where I sit in the Customs Department, and we both are based in the Samia Business Park along Mombasa Road, Block B and Block C. In case you're ever in the area, feel free to pass by and greet us, whereas eTIMS is based in the CBD. They are headquartered in the CBD rather at JQuat Towers, formerly ICA building on the 7th and 8th floor. So all your eTIMS queries, concerns, training requests can be served from there. However, we do have eTIMS presence countrywide in all the KRA offices. Thank you to all of you for making the time to be here, and I look forward to you supporting during the Q&A session. Madam Susan Jeru, maybe we can just conclude with you as the lead of the unit. Susan, if you're in a position to, maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself. If not, that's okay. Maybe you can give a few remarks at the end. Susan? All right, perhaps we'll have Madam Susan Jeru introduce herself and give a few remarks towards the end.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mandy. I was speaking and I was muted.
No worries. Thank you, Madam Susan. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank our participants for making time to join us today. I also want to thank our team from Customs, and I believe we have a team from e-teams who are here just to address any concerns on e-teams. We want to appreciate you because this provides us an opportunity, not just for you to learn a few things about taxation and compliance, and maybe even have a few of the challenges that you're experiencing addressed, but also it gives us an opportunity to understand our taxpayers, understand the sectors in which you are working, which helps us to better serve you. I just want to mention that the Taxpayer Services Division also deals with complaints resolution on top of stakeholder engagement. And so we are happy to address whatever queries you may have. Otherwise, I think we can begin, Mendy. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, Madam Susan and Mr. Karan Mushiri, who I think has been engaging with the leadership of SME Founders Association, run the team, and again, are pleased and delighted to receive requests such as the ones we received at the beginning of this financial year to partner with the SME founders. The MSME sector in Kenya is a key sector we want to continuously partner with and engage with to support them on their compliance journey. So as per the program, I was requested to kind of give an overview of some of the engagements we've been doing so far. And we began with two successful e-teams compliance presentations and trainings conducted by our e-teams operations unit. We took our taxpayers through the key requirements in terms of onboarding onto e-teams, the legislation and the legal framework surrounding e-teams, the various solutions, especially the simplified solutions available to taxpayers in the SME sector to onboard to in order to transmit their invoices simply and in line with the law. So that was on the 5th of September, and on the 12th of September, we had an engagement every Thursday then. We proceeded to have an engagement with our customs department on customs duty for importers and exporters. I believe that was the following Thursday, because we partnered on 3 different Thursdays in that month. And it was a successful session whereby Madam Rita Susan and Mr. Joaquin Mwawasi took taxpayers through the key pieces of information one would need to know. I think in that session, it was quite clear that there are several compliance areas when it comes to customs, whether it's tariffs, whether it's valuation, whether it's matters to do with clearing and forwarding. So it was learned from that session that another session will hopefully be conducted in the future, even with purely on customs related matters in depth, perhaps for about an hour or 2. But indeed, taxpayers were taken through the basics, almost like a crash course of how to be compliant when it comes to importing and exporting goods and services, the various touch points that taxpayers have countrywide, whether it's ICDs, whether it's JKRA and other entry and exit points. Then finally, we are here today on the 3rd of October, the final session for now with the SME Founders Association, where we just wanted to have one last opportunity for an engaging and an interactive Q&A session, and ensure that once we're done with this partnership, at least this 4-part partnership for now, our taxpayers can move forward knowing about their requirements and their obligations and the support channels available to them from KRA to be able to be compliant. So that's where we've come from. And today we just wanted to, again, give you the opportunity upon the request of the SME Founders Association to pose any final comments, questions, concerns, even compliments that we can be able to address in this session. Madam Frida and Madam Warogoro, if it's in order, but I stand guided, we did have some preliminary questions that came in. If you'd like us to touch on those right now, we can. If you'd like us to open the floor for questions, comments, concerns, then we can also do it that way. But I stand guided.
I think you can start with the questions that they had asked, and then we can now go to the floor.
Okay, perfect. That's in order. Indeed, and as the team has recommended, please feel free to post any comments, questions, concerns, compliments, areas of clarification you might need in the chat. Alternatively, I'm sure the team is also agreeable to having you unmute yourselves once I'm done to pose any comments, questions, concerns directly to the panel. Again, I sincerely apologies. I think my background, there's a bit of noise in the background, and I apologize for that, but I hope I'm audible. So we did have some questions coming in before we got here. We always like to perhaps receive preliminary questions where possible, because getting the right people on the panel is also the main focus of our stakeholder engagement unit, so that we have the right officers able to address your queries. We have several departments and several divisions within the departments within KRA. So you'll find that one KRA officer may not be able to be fully in a position to guide on matters customs or matters debt, matters refund. But once we have some preliminary questions, it's always helpful for us to get the right people in the room. The first query or question came actually in the form of a concern and a recommendation. Madam Frida, you'll note we received feedback that our iTax platform was not user-friendly. iTax being the medium through which, the online medium through which taxpayers engage with the authority and fulfill their compliance obligations, which include registration for tax obligations, filing their returns on time, making the necessary payments, and finally, ensuring that the reports that they've made are accurate and dealing with matters arising, whether it's a refund, a waiver application for other certificates like a tax compliance certificate. So we received this feedback that the platform is could be more user-friendly, and the advice was that we revise the wordings also to simplify the language that's available on iTax. So I think that's good feedback, really good feedback that we welcome and encourage even in this session. And I know that there are several teams constantly looking towards simplifying tax knowledge, simplifying tax information, such that even the most sophisticated taxpayer from the least sophisticated taxpayer is able to comply simply and easily. So that's feedback well received, and I think we can escalate that to management to have ICT and the relevant departments within KRA look into that. Asante sana. The next one was, I think, a simple low-hanging fruit. This one can be resolved quite easily. It was a query about how to change a KRA company email address. That is quite simple and straightforward. I hope the taxpayer who posed this question is in this forum today. On the iTax platform, there's the opportunity, and maybe once during the rest of the Q&A session, I can log into iTax to give you a demonstration of how this is done. But you can simply log into iTax under the registration tab. If it's a company, as mentioned in this question, you go under registration and you request to amend PIN details. Upon amending PIN details, it'll prompt you to click on, it's an online form because you'll be submitting it online rather than an Excel, which used to be an available option. Upon selecting online form, it will prompt you to select PIN. Upon selecting PIN, you'll select basic information, which will enable a sheet called basic information sheet to be editable. And then upon that sheet being editable, you'll select email address and put the email address you wish to have used. When it comes to email addresses, we've enhanced it recently so that we have accurate information of our taxpayers. So I believe it will prompt you to confirm that this is an email address that you have access to. It will send an OTP to that email address and then have you input that OTP to confirm that you have access to that email, because we did note that in the past, taxpayers were not receiving information from the authority because either their phone numbers were not updated or their email addresses were not updated. So that's an enhancement that came early this year. So once you're able to do that, you can submit that application. No supporting documentation is required to be uploaded, and it also does not go through an approval process as other tasks in KRA typically do. So change of an email address, change of a phone number don't go through approvals, and you simply submit, and you can now start receiving information on that email address. But I do suspect either no access to iTax because they forgot their PIN. So I beg your pardon, forgot their password, and of course the password is usually sent to the email address that they either don't know anymore or don't have access to. So in that scenario, a taxpayer is able to reach out to our call center. The details you see on your screen, callcenter@kra.go.ke. You indicate the PIN of the entity. You indicate the email within which you wish to change it to, And then the documents that you'll be required to submit are the company registration certificate number, the CR12 of the company, and the IDs of the company directors. Back and front, colored copies of the directors of that company. And that the call center will usually send you a tracking number of sorts, an acknowledgement number. And in the past, I'm aware they usually close that query within 2 days, especially not during filing season. Anytime now, if you do it right today, I'm sure it can be closed tomorrow, latest Monday. I hope that is clear. But that question was also followed up by a concern regarding why taxpayers are fined when not filing their returns despite having no business activity. So I guess the question here is that it appears to be counterintuitive that a taxpayer would receive fines and penalties or for taxes not filed despite being in business and having no taxes to declare for that period. I think that was the rationale of this taxpayer when they asked this question. But I think it's important to emphasize here that filing is your way of communicating to the authority. And by virtue of having an obligation, a tax obligation, whether it's income tax, whether it's a monthly or an annual tax that you file and pay, it's important to communicate to the authority as and when those returns become due, that you either, one, had no activity and you can do so with a nil return before the due date, or two, by indicating the activities of the business and finding yourself either in a payment position, a nil position, or a loss or even a credit position. So I want to just emphasize that despite having no business activity, upon registration of a PIN, and then having that obligation coming as a default, which used to be the case. Now that when you file for a PIN, you can apply to have a PIN with no obligation and subsequently have no returns required to be filed as per the obligation. But because most of us, I think, have PINs that have obligations, whether it's income tax company, whether it's income tax resident individual, whether it's turnover tax, whether it's monthly rental income tax, etc. By virtue of having that obligation, the commissioner, the domestic taxes department, the KRA expects some kind of communication from you as and when those returns become due. And a communication as a nil return is more than sufficient if that is the true position that in that period you had no taxable income. And that's how you can avoid penalties and interest from late filing. We have 3 kinds of penalties in KRA. We have a late filing penalty. We have late payment penalty in case once you file a return and fail to make a necessary payment. If a payment was due, there are penalties associated with that. And then we have interest arising from the failure to make those necessary payments. So those are 3 kinds of penalties and interest that can be imposed. So moving on swiftly, I think I just have 3 more to go, and then we can open the floor. I hope I still have your attention. We had a request for taxpayers, again, matters registration. How can a taxpayer deregister from value-added tax VAT and pay-as-you-earn payee when they change from a sole proprietor to a limited company? So I think here, I will hope that taxpayers in this forum today, because it would be interesting to note why, first and foremost, they wish to deregister from VAT and payee if converting their company from, or rather incorporating their company from a business name to a limited company, because it would follow that those obligations, if the business activity is continuing, would simply be applicable to the company PIN. Or perhaps if you proceed to register VAT and pay on that PIN of the company, perhaps this taxpayer is asking how to go about now deregistering it from their individual PIN, because a sole proprietor is considered to have the same identity as a taxpayer for tax purposes. And I believe if that's the question, then the necessary documents when it comes to deregistration vary depending on the tax head. When it's VAT or pay, first and foremost, the taxpayer must own the process, indicating through a letter that they request to deregister for the specific obligation with reason. A letter is quite straightforward. It's simply signed by the sole proprietor, indicating that in this period, I incorporated my my entity and I no longer have I ceased the operations of the business name. I think it's called cessation, and this business no longer exists. I am now trading under such and such company, XYZ. So first and foremost is a letter in order for you to own the process. Then subsequently, depending on, again, the nature of the of the application, or rather the nature of the tax head, various other documents are required. Sometimes an affidavit will be required in case the obligation is erroneous. Sometimes you'll be requested for bank statements going back 6 months, just to confirm that no activities has been traded on that company and the bank account. But typically those are the main documents. Because this is simply a conversion and you'll be paying those taxes against another PIN, the company PIN, I suspect and I'm confident that a letter should suffice in terms of obligation. Of course, you'll be required in terms of deregistration. Of course, have been required to file up to date. So whether or not there's a nil returns, you'll be required to have filed up to date and be compliant in those obligations. So you have no pending penalties, interests to make, and no pending payments of taxes to make either. I hope that's clear. Upon this, you make that application in iTax also under registration tab, you can deregister for an obligation and attach the supporting documentation. That should be, again, reviewed internally within 60 days. 60 days is our service level agreement timeline for cancellation of a tax obligation. Great. As I conclude, the last few questions I think can be tackled together, Madam Frida and team. They relate to taxation of SMEs. And similar to that, there was a question about taxation of content creators. And I'll finally conclude with a question on the tax obligations established by a partnership, or rather how to file such returns. So regarding SMEs and content creators specifically, at the end of the day, depends on the nature of the income being received. Kenya operates a specified sources of income tax regime, which means that taxes charged on the specific source of income. So whether it's business income, we have employment income as another specified source of income. We have agricultural income, we have rental income, we have income from commission, interest, dividends, etc. So it's first and foremost to ascertain what the nature of that income is and apply the necessary taxes on that. So for SMEs, we can again assume that by and large, it will likely be business income, and you have the opportunity to be under the annual regime or the monthly regime, which is under the turnover tax simplified tax regime. I'll briefly touch on perhaps the first one, which is business income under the annual regime. So in Kenya, we have tax bands ranging from 10% to 35%. And based on the income and the turnover generated in that period, that's what will determine which tax head you will fall under and how you'll be taxed for that period. When it comes to business income, of course, you're allowed to claim any expenses that were wholly and exclusively incurred to generate that business income. And moving, I think from this year, 1st of January, all those expenses must be supported by e-Teams or Teams compliant invoices for them to be allowable in when you file your return next year. Other taxes might arise, perhaps if you are earning business income, but you also have rental income and you're under the annual regime. You can choose to be under the annual regime for your business income, and for your rentals, be under the what we call a monthly rental income tax, MRI, monthly residential rental income, which is taxed at 7.5% on the gross income received for that period, a monthly tax accounting period. So you'll file that monthly and make the necessary payments monthly. For that, no expenses are deductible, and you simply charge the 7.5% on the gross rent received. Similarly, if you choose to opt out of the business or the annual business income regime, you can opt for the turnover tax regime, which is a simplified tax regime whereby you're charged 1.5% on the gross turnover for your turnover for that month. It's also an accounting period that's monthly, and you'll be required to account for your activities in that month. Charge the system iTax when you file your return will apply a 1.5% tax on that income, and then you'll simply proceed to file that, submit that form, and make the necessary payments. That's the filing and payment due date are the 20th of the following month. It's important to know that TOT and MRI are final taxes in the spirit, again, of being a simplified tax regime. Expenses are not deductible, but these are final taxes. So that income need not be restated elsewhere, perhaps, for example, in your annual return. Similarly, and I think this is where the content creators tax comes in. Content creation is, of course, also a form of business income. But through the Finance Act 2023, there was something called the Digital Content Monetization withholding tax that was introduced at 5% for residents and 25% for non-residents. I'll make the assumption that most of us here are residents for tax purposes. So therefore, perhaps if you do, content creation on a digital platform, and you do it with a withholding tax agent, these are your large taxpayers. Typically, you will do a campaign for them, and upon making payment to you, they will withhold tax under the Digital Content Monetization withholding tax regime at 5%. This will be credited to your account, and you will also then be able to, upon filing your return, claim the necessary expenses, enjoy that credit on your return, and then pay the remainder of the tax. Remember, I said the tax regime for business income ranges from 10% to 35%. So you'll pay the balance of the taxes upon deducting your expenses, file that return, and make the necessary payments, if any. So those are by and large the SMEs. There are simplified methods for SMEs to comply, and digital content creators as well, more simplified methods. This is, again, that withholding tax introduced was an effort to expand the tax base, noting this growing income generating source of content creation and income generation on digital platforms. Finally, the question on, and I hope the questions are coming in, please feel free to be posting comments, questions, concerns. The team in the forum from customs, e-teams will also be able to assist in responding in the interest of time. So finally, it was a question on how partnerships are taxed and how their taxes are calculated. So it's important to note that partnerships are indeed taxed at the graduated scale, 10% to 35%, if they choose to be in the annual regime. Partnerships are also eligible to file and pay their returns under the turnover tax regime, which is again monthly, 1.5%. No expenses deductible. It's important also to note that partnerships, whereas partnerships file and account for the income earned and taxes due, it is the partners that are required to pay the necessary taxes upon the partnership filing its return. And the partners will indeed pay the taxes depending on the profit loss sharing ratio agreed between the partners and the partnership. So in the return, when you're filing your partnership return, which is filed annually on iTax, you will indicate the accounts based on the activities of that. Upon preparation of the accounts of the partnership, you will feed those information into the return, the Excel return, and the system will calculate for you the taxes applicable. It will apportion it according to the partner's profit loss sharing ratio, and the taxpayers will be able to, upon filing that partnership return, that a partnership is usually indicated as a P-PIN. It will now credit the debit rather the accounts of the partners who will be required to file the return. I beg your pardon. Upon filing their own return as partners and indicating any additional sources of income, because of course a partner may be a partner in this partnership, but also be earning employment income, may also be earning other sources of income. So when they're filing their individual return, they will have the partnership taxes accounted for in this return. They'll pay those taxes in addition to any other taxes applicable based on their other sources of income, file their own return, and make the payments necessary. Therefore, for that, once filing and payment, those twin processes are done by the partnership and the partner, for that accounting period, they'll be considered compliant. The partnership and partners have the same accounting period. By default, it falls under the calendar year January to December. So upon the end of the accounting period, the partnership is required to file their returns between 1st of January and 30th of June. 6 months after the end of the accounting period. Within that time, the partnership is required to file, and the partner is then required also to file and pay on the income of the of the taxes rather, of the partnership and the taxes for any other sources of income that they may be earning. Great. So I think that was the main bulk of the questions, the preliminary questions we received regarding just how SMEs and MSMEs can be compliant in their taxes. I don't know if there's any other panelist who wants to touch on additional areas. You're free to do so at this point, but maybe Madam Frida, I can just hand over to you for any reactions and or to welcome your members to pose questions, comments, and concerns. I'll reiterate, we have members from our Domestic Taxes Department, Customs team, and E-Team's Operations Unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mandy. And thank you very much, Mandy. Thank you very much to all the founders that are listening here online and those that will be listening after. My name is Frida Owinga. I'm the founder of SME Founders Association, where we connect founders to money, to markets, and to mentors. And we are fully aware that we cannot do that on our own. So we have different partners. And your first partner in any country is the Revenue Authority of that country. So we are very excited to be having KRA support us in this way. The whole of August up until now, they have been doing webinars, which we have called SME Tax Empowerment Program. So I'd just like you to put your emoji hands in the chat and appreciate them for the good work they have done. I know many of us fear KRA. I used to be one of those people until I came in touch with Mandy and her team. Our good friend Karanu is the first person I spoke with, and I was like, you all are so kind. I didn't know that. So let's put our hands together for them. And then the next thing I'd like those that are listening to us to understand is that SME Founders Association is a volunteer-led association that was set up for founders. A founder is anybody who is solving a problem and commercializing it so that they're able to generate revenue. So when you become part of SME Founders Association, you become part of a community where we support one another and we are volunteer-led. I have a full-time job. I'm the regional director for Africa for We Connect International. I'm just showing up here to appreciate KRA, then I ran back to work. Thank you all of you very much for participating in the last 3 weeks. And next month, this month, we're going to carry on with the SME, why corporate governance is important for SMEs. But today we are on the taxes, and I'd just like to know if there are any other questions for the KRA team. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions. Don't fear, they don't bite. They're our friends. They make sure that the tax space is comfortable for us to navigate so that our country can have money and do the things that make it a peaceful and enabling environment to do business anyway. So I welcome you to ask your questions. Mandy, thank you so much, Mandy and your team. I'm assuming all the questions have been answered. So from the questions that were received online, you know, Kenyans are very fearful people. They're probably saying, oh, that is just a trick to catch us. They will trace it back to us. So we didn't get as many questions as we wanted, but I'd like you to know whether you're in the room or you're going to listen to this at a further or later date. KRA is your first partner. The Revenue Authority of any country is your first partner. If you're not paying your taxes, you cannot access more capital. You cannot access more capital because people will not trust you if you're not paying your own government. So irrelevant of what the government is doing, you need to ensure that you're paying your taxes. Because when you go to the bank, you're looking for a loan, they're going to ask you for your audited accounts. They're going to ask you for a tax compliance. If you go to look for a corporate bid so that you can get more money, an investor, a corporate will always require a tax compliance certificate, which is really easy to get if you're ensuring that every month you're filing your VAT, you're filing your payee. And this is something that you can do by yourself if you're starting from ground zero. If you're stuck or you need more help, you need to get an accountant. Guess what? We have accountants at SME Founders Association to help you. And we have accountants and we also have tax consultants. We also have auditors. So all you need to do is reach out to us at hello@SME Founders Association so that we can help you. You started your business to run a business. There's going to be a lot of technical stuff that you need to deal with, and that's why we exist, to help you. So when we say we connect you to money, to markets, and to mentors, we do. But you need to be one of us so that we can give you access to those things. Access means that they're available because you are showing up to collect them. So I'm going to stop there and ask again, do we have any questions? I see Jackson Wambua. Jackson, I see your hand. You can unmute and speak. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. My name is Jackson Wambua. I'm the founder and co-save consultancy services. Actually, I registered the company last year, towards the end of last year, around November, here in Kenya. Although I started in Uganda. Now, am I supposed to file my returns every month, or I wait until June, at the start of June? Or am I supposed to file my returns on monthly basis? I deal with the IT equipment, that is a supply of computers to institutions and mostly schools. Thank you.
Thank you
Asante
very
sana,
much, Jackson. Carry on, KRA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member from the team, feel free to jump in. But sir, this is a really good question, and thank you for that clarification. Matters filing and payment are the first two steps of the compliance journey. In the compliance wheel, we have registration, we have filing, we have payment, and we have reporting, accuracy of reporting. So it's important to note that you can opt to be in the annual regime or the monthly regime when filing your business income. As I mentioned, we have two regimes, annual and monthly, and it depends on the tax obligation that you're registered for. Maybe I can just confirm, are you registered for the turnover tax obligation, which is the one that requires you to file on a monthly basis on your business income, and you're charged 1.5% against that gross turnover for that period? Maybe Jackson, you can just confirm if you're running a company, and are you by default in the annual regime, or are you in the have you registered for TOT?
Your right is annual.
Perfect. So if you are registered for the annual regime for your company, then you're not registered for value added tax, which is also a monthly tax. Are you registered for VAT yet?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. So you now have IT2C, what we call income tax company, and we have VAT that you're registered for. Are there any other obligations that you're registered for?
No.
Tax obligations. Okay, perfect. So when it comes to VAT, I'm sure if you registered recently, you'll note that that is a tax obligation that has a monthly accounting period. So yes, you are required to file and pay any necessary taxes on or before the 20th of the following month for every month that you have that tax obligation. So in your sales, you charge VAT to your taxpayers, or rather to your clients. You charge it at a rate of 16% because you've given a sense of the nature of the goods that you're trading in. So you charge VAT at 16%. That constitutes your output tax, VAT, for VAT purposes. You collected that 16% from your final consumers, assuming it's taxed to a final consumer, even to a business. It doesn't really matter so long as it's a sale that you've made and you've charged 16%. You've collected that 16% on behalf of the government. You're required to remit that on or before the 20th of every following month after claiming any expenses that you incurred. Excuse me, any expenses that you incurred that were also charged VAT to generate that income. So any expenses that relate to the business for that month, you're also enabled to claim the VAT element of that, covered under input VAT. Excuse me. And upon doing the calculation of your output tax minus your input VAT, you could find that you're in a payment position for VAT purposes. You could find that you're in a nil position, or you could find that you're in a credit position. Excuse me once again, my apologies. If you're in a payment position, you're required upon filing to make the necessary payments on or before the 20th of the following month, failure to which we have what we call a late filing penalty, late payment penalty, and interest accruing on that payment. If you are in a nil position, you're still required, of course, to file your return, but there'll be no associated payments to be made. If you're in a credit position, VAT allows you to carry forward those VAT credits up until the point where you'll be in a credit, or rather a payment position. It will offset your future VAT liabilities until it's depleted. So that's just to clarify. Excuse me, just a moment.
It's okay.
Sorry about that. So as I mentioned, just to clarify, your input VAT arises from your purchases that were charged VAT that went in towards the business. And your output VAT arises from the sales that you make, where which you charge VAT. So that is a monthly tax, and it's a requirement and an obligation to file and make any necessary payments for VAT. Now, when it comes to the business income that you'll be filing and paying on an annual basis, you mentioned the month June, but if your accounting period for your company is the calendar year January to December, it's 6 months, within 6 months that you're required to file your returns. Within 6 months, meaning so you can file as early as January, or you can file in June, as you mentioned. You have 6 months, within 6 months after the end of your accounting period for companies to file the returns. Then the payments are also required to be made excuse me, within that period. So because you're registered for 2 obligations that have different accounting periods, you will indeed be filing your VAT monthly. That's a requirement and an obligation. And then you will also be required to file your annual return. Upon preparing your books of accounts for that period, you'll be required to file within 6 months and make the necessary payments.
That's
Jackson,
much
do you
in
have a
order.
follow-up
Thank you.
question? I hope you're also eTIMS compliant and having a smooth journey along on that front.
Yeah, I'm compliant.
Okay,
In case of
perfect.
anything, I'll visit your offices.
Yes, please do. We are there to support taxpayers in as we roll out this and new features when it comes to eTIMS. I think we did have 2
Okay, thank
questions. Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. We had 2 good questions coming from the presentation from Mr. Jack Nyamwaya. And I know my colleague has responded to the second question. So for in the interest of time, maybe Mr. Jack, I can just respond to your first question regarding the service level agreement timelines that we have. I mentioned that we do have a 60-day SLA for cancellation of tax obligations. This means that upon submitting your application or iTax with the relevant documentation, the authority and the officer receiving your task within your tax service office will have 60 days to review and close that task, failure to which it becomes a complaint and can be escalated to our complaints office, which are also required to close it within 30 days. So within that period, if you've not received communication that your obligation has been cancelled, and you can do so, it will come usually through the form of an email. And if it doesn't come through notification via email, you can continuously be reprint. What I think I would recommend is you reprint your PIN certificate, and it will indicate the status of your obligation. Is it active? Is it cancelled? Is it stopped? So if it still reads active, it means that you indeed are active in this obligation, and you will be required to account for those obligations. Remember, I said filing is merely a communication tool, and iTax is a medium through which you communicate to the authority your activities for that period. I would recommend, as you await the closure of that task and the request that you've made, you file your returns accurately and based on the position of your business. You will indeed, as you mentioned, it's a nil return you'll be filing. That's in order to avoid automatic penalties. Maybe I should just clarify, applying for the application doesn't put the obligation on hold. Maybe iTax isn't that intuitive or updated and enhanced yet, but you are required to still account for any obligation that you're registered for. So if your obligation is active, file a nil return if there are no taxes to be paid for that period. And if your task is not reviewed within 60 days, you can always write to our DTD complaints office, dtdcomplaints@kra.go.ke, and you quote your PIN or the task number that you received upon making that application, and they will work towards closing that for you within 30 days. Mr. Jack, I hope that's clear. And I know you received a response regarding your partnership question. On my end, I've not received any additional queries. Maybe if a panelist has received one directly that's not visible to the rest of us, please feel free to address that now. But I'll hand over back to you, Madam Frida. Thank you, Susan, for responding to that question.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Thank you for the questions. Do we have any other question? Do we have any other question? I don't see any hand up. And
excuse me.
Yes, you are
Frida,
excused.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah,
No
this
problem.
is Jack Nyamoyo. And
yes,
just further on the question concerning the partnership, I just needed to know if they are already getting withholding tax certificates with because of the fact that the consultancy from the partnership has already attracted a withholding tax. How then is the treatment of that withheld tax? Because already it's already prepaid. So again, is it dividable between the partners, or how do you treat the withheld tax and the profit that if effectively is transferred to the partners? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jack, for that follow-up. I'll attempt to respond to your question, and then I'll also request Madam Susan Jeru, if she can still hear us, to assist with an additional response. Mr. Jack, as you rightly put it, withholding tax is a prepaid tax on behalf of the taxpayer by the person that they traded with. It is a credit to your account as the partnership, because of course the partnership PIN is the one that was given in order to, just a moment, please. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. There was a bit of commotion where I was. We have, again, as I mentioned, withholding tax is credited to the partnership's account. As you're filing the partnership's return, there's a sheet within which you can indicate the is it the withholding certificate number. And when you file that return, when you validate and submit it into iTax, if it goes valid certificate and has been accounted for and paid, then those credits are already in the partnership's account, and the partner will not, of course, be paying any additional taxes based on the credit, because the credit will reduce the tax liability that will be transferred to the accounts of the partners. The payment is made by the partners. The account, Susan, I don't know if you're in a position to just add on to that as to how this is a partnership, as the taxpayer mentioned, that is a consultant, and their income is withheld from the tax is withheld from them upon payment. Susan?
Yes, Mandy, I think you handled the question well. So what happens is that the partnership is declaring the income, and in determining what is going to now be the amount that is taxed. Notice the partners are individually accounting for their taxes. Then those certificates are factored into that in determining what is the tax that will then be paid. So it's factored in the withholding tax in computing the amount that is due from the individual taxpayers, the individual partners.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Susan. I hope it's clear, Mr. Jack, that in these scenarios, there is no worry or concern about double taxation. Withholding taxes are credited to the account, and the taxpayer is enjoying those credits to reduce their tax liability, rightfully so.
Yeah, it does seem clear. Oh, sorry for that. Just in a very simplified way, I would think then that the profit that is then transferred to the partners is net of those credits of the withholding tax. And if my understanding of that is correct, then I'm okay. I've been satisfactorily addressed. The matter has been satisfactorily addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you for those questions. Also, then, some of these queries we get enable us to understand some of perhaps the knowledge gaps that exist out there so that we can update our website with simplified materials so that we are giving taxpayers accurate information about what the updates are, how to file accurately, how to pay accurately, because we also want to empower taxpayers at the individual level to understand, even if you perhaps were to outsource this work of filing and payment to someone else, it's important to understand the basis on which eTIMS is anchored. It's important to understand how the return works and how to feed in information so that even when information is being requested from you, it's making sense as to why and how it will be used. I think, Madam Frida, on my end, I'm not able to see any additional questions. Allow me to just request Madam Caroline Mbagara from our eTIMS Operations Unit just to close for us from the KRA side with any eTIMS updates that she wishes to give or helpful information required regarding where they are based in Nairobi and countrywide. Caroline, sorry to put you on the spot, but maybe you can just close for us from an eTIMS team perspective.
Thank you so much, Mandy. As she said, my name is Caroline. And generally, what we can just say is eTIMS is still ongoing. I hope all of you are on board. And in case of any challenges, always feel free to contact us so that we can support. Currently, we are trying to make eTIMS very easy. Even matters enhancements, we're improving on all the enhancements so that from your side of view, are able to operate with eTIMS in the best way possible. In case there are any challenges, because we'll be doing so many other enhancements, we'll be doing even updates, upgrades on eTIMS. You can always reach us. But however, we've done those updates also on the website so that you are able to get the support that is required. I think that is much I can say for now, Mandy. Believe they have our contacts that you're able to reach out to us and even being able to support them from wherever place we are. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Madam Frida, we'll hand over back to you. And thank you so much for the opportunity to engage with your members. Over to you. Caroline, I think you're still unmuted. Maybe we can just hand over to Madam Frida to close. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, KRA, for supporting us this last month. It has been very insightful. And thank you very much for everyone who has joined us this morning and who is going to be joining us online even after this. This is the SME Founders Association. The program has been SME Tax Empowerment with KRA, helping you understand how to work with KRA so that you are compliant, because the more compliant you are, the more capital you can access. So we're very happy that you are here with us this morning. We have come to the top of the hour. If you'd like to engage with SME Founders Association, where we connect you to money, markets, and mentors, please follow us on our social media, or you can send us an email to hello@SME Founders Association. Thank you very much. Until next month, where we have the corporate governance for SMEs, have a good day and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.